Hi everybody, I'm Bill Sharp, St. Andrews class of '68, and welcome to the Rocks and Razorbacks podcast. Here, we feature conversations with remarkable alumni, teachers, and administrators from both Middleton and St. Andrews High Schools. This is a great way to share meaningful stories and keep our memories alive of growing up in West Ashley. Now for today's show.
Donna Jacobs is a researcher, author, and journalist. She does it all. I would describe her as a West Ashley history expert, but she'd politely correct me and say that she's more of a St. Andrews Parish history expert. Either way, we're so grateful to have her support for our documentary project. Donna met me at the College of Charleston Special Collections Reading Room, where we talked about the early days of St. Andrews Parish and St. Andrews High School. Plus, while I had her on camera, I couldn't resist discussing a few West Ashley fun facts that I learned, well, thanks to one of her books. Donna, thanks so much for being here with me today.
Oh, you're welcome. I'm happy to help you with this. This is a great project, I think, for the community.
Thank you, and I think I consider you as a really valuable source.
I kind of came to this in an interesting way. I did chemistry research for a career, but late in my life, I was asked to write a book on Burns Downs, my neighborhood, and it was based on a garden club scrapbook that is now here at the Special Collections for people to see, and it's also digitally online. And since that time, I was asked to do a book on West Ashley, and I told the publisher, I said, you're going to have to give me a minute because I don't even know what I don't know, because what most people don't realize is St. Andrews Parish is kind of where we started, where the boat landed, and our history is rich and very deep. But we've just kind of evolved into a suburb. So people just think it's just a suburb, but it's not. And it has a really, really complex, beautiful history. And I principally I've kind of defined my borders as St. Andrews Parish, because I'm not a historian, and the time frame from post-Civil War to when we became kind of the 50s, when we were a really thriving suburb. And once I engaged the College of Charleston to manage the Garden Club scrapbook for Burns Downs, which is a beautiful, and people should go online and search it out because it is a beautiful capsule of time. They've been very receptive to receiving other things. And when I started my West Ashley work, I met a young man. Well, he's not a young man. He was an older man, but I like to think of him as a young man. Bill Brockenfeld, and he was very involved with St. Andrews Parish High School. He went there, he loved it like everybody who went there loves it. And he was still involved with the athletic department, and he told me this fantastic story about Mr. Hester and his scrapbooks. He was telling me how he acquired them, which is a very funny story that I'm going to tell. After he graduated, he got involved with the athletic department at the school. And one day they were having a meeting, and a man came in and said, this was after the fire at the high school, and they were tearing everything down. And the man said, we found a bunch of interesting stuff, and we're putting it in a different dumpster because it was paper. And of course, this sparked Mr. Brockenfeld's interest. And so he went home later that evening and got his wife, and they went dumpster diving, and they found Mr. Hester's scrapbooks. 3 scrapbooks that Mr. Hester had kept in detail of his time there at St. Andrews Parish. And there's no way to describe the value of this, because like in this scrapbook, there's all the students have signed a program. You know, there'll be details that are handwritten. There'll be teachers' names in their own hand. Every little article out of the newspaper. He was very proud of his students, and the students loved him. So one scrapbook was intact, one scrapbook was so-so, and one scrapbook was completely torn apart. The one that was torn apart happened to be in the time frame where Bill was there, so he could put it back together himself because he knew the time frame. Unfortunately, he would share these for different reunions, and one time only 2 of the 3 scrapbooks returned. So there is one somewhere that we would love to get with the rest of his brothers and sisters here at the Special Collections, but as he moved along, I kept encouraging him to think about sharing them with the public and putting them in the archive. And before he passed away, he did that. So they're here lovingly being taken care of for all the community at the College of Charleston's special collection, which I'm so excited about. But it takes a little bit of money to formally make a collection and get them digitalized and everything, which is something that I work on. But we're not quite there yet. So I'm really excited that you're doing the documentary, because it's one more layer of bringing awareness to the importance of our community.
Thank you. Yeah, the sense of history, I'm going to have to admit, especially as I get older. Now, I don't want to just be quoting your book. In a nutshell, can you give our viewers, how was the parish, how did it come to be? St. Andrew's Parish is kind of unique.
Well, it's not just us. We have St. Michael's and St. Christopher's. The British did this in 1706. They created the Church Act and divided the land into parishes around the churches. That's kind of how we get to a parish. And at the beginning, it included James Island. So there are times when we're researching St. Andrew's Parish history that we get a little akimbo, if you will, because we'll say, but that's James Island. Well, we were part of James Island originally. It was redrawn a couple of times. And then the counties were redrawn because St. Andrew's Parish was, for a minute, in Berkeley County, parts of it. So we look for records and we find they're still up in Berkeley County. So it's been a real Easter egg hunt, which that makes it fun. And it makes it fun when you discover things too. The thing about the school, though, that is most interesting, and this will be a plea to your viewers if they know anything, the school history, I've been writing about it, is St. Andrew's Parish school system started on Old Town under Legree. Most of the people didn't live over here except for the enslaved people, and they weren't allowed to be in part of a school system. But then in like the late 1800s, they didn't want to take their kids downtown, so they made a small school. And the lore goes, and it's written in some of these annuals that you see, that it started in an old slave church on the Legree property. That's where the school system started for the white children. And you go, well, that's peculiar. And it was kind of peculiar. And then it got to where that wasn't convenient for people, so they moved it. They moved it to what was called a VWF hut on Savannah Highway. Haven't ever been able to find out about this. That's a big hole in the story. But ultimately, the reason that the school landed on Wapu Road, that most people don't realize, is that bisects and is the center of the parish. So they moved the school to the center of the parish. And they started in a place called the Little Brown Schoolhouse. We do have pictures of that Little Brown Schoolhouse and how it was built and everything. But then as people started to migrate West Ashley to the country, they called it, there was a need for a bigger, larger building. And there was a PTA formed, and they, of course, raised the money and started building the school that we knew for a long time until it burned. And the complex has still stayed there till today because it's technically the center of the parish.
Fascinating. And so the column front of St. Andrew's High, as we know it, was that around 1939, 1940?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's and those steps were called the senior steps. You could only go up if you were a senior. For the most people that were there, it was a tradition about that. And I think Mr. Hester's office was in the building to the right. People could correct me that know about it. And that's part of the building that did burn. But somehow these scrapbooks were in a closet or something that was protected. That's how they're still more or less intact.
Right. I think I read in your book that 1978 fire took away a lot of memorabilia and scrapbooks in your books.
Yeah, exactly. Except these. For some reason, there was some grace with these. And Mr. Brockenfeld and his dumpster diving, which I think is just fascinating.
The first principal for St. Andrew's Parish High was C.E. Williams. I think I read that in your book.
Yes, yeah. I was going to say because the principal that was before Mr. Hester died in an automobile accident. So I think that's right. I think it went C.E. Williams to this man that I don't recall his name. The reason Mr. Hester moved up was because he passed away unexpectedly in an automobile accident. Yeah. And that's how Mr. Hester moved into that position.
C. Williams is a name, a very prominent name in the
Absolutely.
West Ashley, St. Andrews Parish area. I went to C. Williams Middle School.
Exactly. Another big name that most people don't really realize, and I didn't until recently, is it's a Ravenel, but it's Charles Ravenel. It's a different branch of the Ravenel family, and he was the one that owned Old Town Acres. He farmed that land.
That was my neighborhood.
Okay. He
Next to Linavar, which is
Ravenel spelled backwards. Everybody loves to state that fact.
Yeah.
But he was very involved in the school district. Very involved. He might have been like chairman of the board or something, because they have different, I don't remember exactly because they had different titles, but he was very involved in the school district and the management of these schools at the very beginning. Mr. Charles Ravenel. When Mr. Hester came on as principal, he instituted something that everybody talks about, because if you interview everybody of this age that had him as a principal, they speak about him in such glowing fashion and admiration that this man really affected everyone's life that he touched, which is just remarkable to state. But the one thing that he did was he started this, what we call the Broadway shows, or the shows that he had in the spring. And he made sure that every student, regardless of talent or no talent, was engaged in some way. And Mr. Brockenfeld even said, I was handing out programs. You did something. So he got everybody involved. And then the community got involved because costumes were made and the parents showed up. And it was really kind of the talk of the town that when he did this during his lifetime. He was very involved with theater, the Dock Street Theater. Students remember him going on trips to New York and taking some of them with him so that they could learn about like what's popular or what to do. But if you look, especially in the scrapbook that we have right here, the pictures and the programs, this is professional. This doesn't seem like just a school production. This is a professional production. So with his interest in theater himself with the Dock Street and then going to New York, he was able to bring that level of professionalism to the school in the arts, which I think is amazing, but also including everybody in it, regardless. Even if you had no talent, there was something for you to do. You could sweep or hand out a program or put out the benches or greet or sell the tickets or anything. So it's a wonderful thing.
Do we know a lot about the theater at the school property at that time?
I think it was in a gymnasium that had a stage in it. So I don't know, because these buildings were added on to exactly, and I don't remember the lineage of the building of all these buildings.
The current theater there now was built, I guess, after the fire.
Probably, but there are pictures that were shared with me. Ina Boodle is a really dear friend of mine, and her family had quite prominence in the West Ashley, St. Andrews Parish area. They brought barbecue over here, not messengers. And her cousin Luther was the school photographer for the Pelican of, I think it was 46 or 47. And we have all of the negatives, large format negatives from his time where he shot everything for that annual, which is pretty phenomenal.
Your book has some phenomenal pictures of the productions.
Yes, yes.
Either posing, after, before, or during, and they're terrific.
He shot a lot of stuff. People shot a lot of stuff. They shared them with me, and when they share, you feel this amazing love and connection with that created a beautiful connection with the school for that period of time. So this is one thing that's really important that will come out in your documentary, is the affection for him and the school and what he brought to the community, which could easily have not been that way, with a different kind of leader.
Where did his nickname come from?
They called him Professor. Fess is short for professor. And do you know that one class loved this man so much they raised money and bought him a car? So that tells you that's a pretty fantastic thing for high school kids to get together to raise the money to buy their principal a car. Okay.
Right. Yeah. In my teaching, I think I've gotten a Mountain Dew once. No, twice.
Yeah. I cannot say enough about him, learning about him from these people, because it's a universal story. It doesn't change.
Right.
It doesn't change.
Fess actually designed or came up with the emblem for the St. Andrews Parish High School?
It's my understanding that he came up with the Latin phrase, which I'm not going to try to pronounce, but it says, it translates in dare to be wise, which is the way I actually ended my book, because I think as we move forward, we should dare to be wise about where we're going as a community. I thought it was a great statement for children that are graduating from high school, but it's my understanding that he designed the emblem that's on there. This is the emblem that, from my understanding, that Mr. Hester worked to design. And he also chose a Latin phrase to symbolize the school, and it's at the top of this emblem. I will not try to embarrass myself pronouncing it, but it translates into dare to be wise, which I think is a great symbol for students as they matriculate through school and graduate high school. You have the landing of the boat. You have the picks that represent the phosphate mining. You have the pelican, which is the symbol of the St. Andrews Episcopal Church. There's a symbolism with the pelican there. And I believe this top plant represents indigo, as I remember. It's my understanding that he designed all that. He's quite an accomplished person for the community. Left a legacy, amazing legacy.
Absolutely, absolutely. Have you had a chance to attend a few of the older reunions?
Yes, I have, and I've been invited, and they're really, really fun. And what's wonderful about that is they're making scrapbooks of them. So there's these memories are being put together and held by the community. That's how important it is to them to do that. For the people that graduate from this high school, they saw it differently. They see it through a different lens. And it is kind of interesting to listen to how they see that period of time. The African American heritage of schools is a little different, and there is a great heritage in St. Andrews Parish about that. The Frederick Deming School, which recently a marker was installed over in Maryville on the land that was where the school was. There's a Tobin Boyd School in Red Top that community is working on. Not a documentary, but similar, raising awareness and bringing the narrative back up. There were two schools up 61, and excuse the language, but one was called St. Andrews Negro Elementary, and the other was on the Runningmead property. And there was also kindergartens that were famous, and one set on what we call the Hill, which I always ask people, why are things called the Hill in the African community in the Low Country, because I don't understand where the Hill is. But where Total Wine was a Miss Katie's kindergarten, which is very famous among several generations. And up until, and then we had Wallace Consolidated that came out of the equalization process, I believe. I'm not very good at that lineage of history like other people are, but there was a very strong school system for the African Americans here, and they did very well. And then we got into real segregation issues. And then we got into integration, which you'll probably touch on in your documentary because of the time frame.
West Ashley was home to 2 prison of war camps.
Yes.
I've read about that, and thank you very much from your book. And I'm just fascinated by that. Can you give us a synopsis of that story?
The first prisoner of war camp, well, first of all, I heard all kinds of urban legends, and as you're learning probably, there's a nugget of truth in an urban legend. You just have to get to that nugget. Sometimes it's hard to vet. The first prisoner of war camp, there were a few, and the 2 that I know about, so I'll just talk about those 2, was located in what is now Westwood, behind John Wesley Church. I learned a lot about that from even Barbara Gilchrist that you have interviewed, because I think it was her or another lady from Old Windermere said they could see the camp from their bedroom, which is in Old Windermere. And I thought, well, where we know the camp to be over on the Ashley River on Colony Drive, it's a little far to see lights, but there you could. But I was able to track that down and verify it. This is probably a whole nother podcast about POW camps, so I'll stop that story there. But Means, Coatsworth Pinckney Means, had land over along the river, and he offered land there. So for whatever reason, they decided to move the camp there. There were Italians and Germans in the camp. I think originally Italians at Westwood, mainly Germans, when they were moved over to the other land. And that's where the chimney was. It was torn down.
What can you tell me about the famous West Ashley Coburg Cow and its history?
Well, it was an advertisement for the dairy. Francis Henkel and a man named Auld, A-U-L-D, joined forces to open the dairy in the early 1900s. And then Mr. Henkel moved his family over there. They lived on Vanderhorst Street, and he moved his family over there, and they lived on the dairy. I'm not quite sure when the sign went up, but it had several iterations. They also had a store. There's a picture of it in my book. They had a store at the corner where they sold ice cream and milk and things of this nature. It was also the site for when you were drafted during the war. You were asking about World War II. Mm-hmm. That was the draft office, that little building. And the dairy, when I moved into Burnstown, the dairy was still functioning a bit on the property. It no longer functioned. They moved it to North Charleston, and then Borden bought it out, and then I'm not sure where it all dissolves, but for some luck to the community, the sign and the cows still stand at the corner as our icon.
Yeah, it's funny. I think in my mind's eye, when I dream about the documentary and how to get it started, I can't help but, since I grew up here, think about how West Ashley's always sort of been the forgotten part of the city of Charleston. Yeah. And you look at the beautiful beaches, the history of the peninsula, and then you think of West Ashley, and you see the Coburg Cow. Am I wrong on that?
You're not wrong on that, and that's why I have a group called the West Ashley Historians. There's 6 of us, and we work diligently on this thing. I've published my 2 books. Diane Hamilton's a part of the group. She's published her book on Maryville. I write for the West of. I lecture. We have a West Ashley history series at the Hurd Library. We're trying to tell people that it's real important over here, because when the boat came up the river, it came to West Ashley. And we started over here. And when they decided where the town should be ultimately, they found the peninsula being strategic, and I understand that. But we still started over here. And if I started telling you things that had nothing to do with the school about what we've learned about St. Andrew's Parish and West Ashley, it would be the rest of the afternoon and into tomorrow probably. Fun, exciting things that we've learned in our research over here that we continue to uncover.
One of my first jobs when I was a teenager was at the sheds right there on Wapoo, Savannah Highway and Wapoo.
Yes.
And I think me and my buddy Josh Baker lasted maybe 2 days, and we were pretty scrawny little kids at that age. And they said, you don't need to come back. But the sheds, I mean, that's across the street from St. Andrew's High.
Actually, truck farming and its impact on St. Andrew's Parish. Truck farming isn't unique to St. Andrew's Parish, but that part of history is kind of not really deeply understood, and it's fascinating. How that shed got built, the impacts of the railroads, the impact of truck farming.
So after two nights at the sheds, and then 2 nights as a dishwasher at the Love Inn in Northbridge, I took a job as a busboy at the Round Holiday Inn.
Oh, wow.
Okay?
Wow.
What I find interesting about the Round Holiday Inn and our quest to dive into West Ashley, St. Andrews, Middleton, is like you can't even look at West Ashley from on top of the Round Holiday Inn.
You can only look at the city.
You can only look at the city. Yeah. And it's like, is that a metaphor for maybe how West Ashley has been treated through the years?
That is an interesting thought process. I haven't thought about that, but I'm going to ponder on that one for a minute.
Why do you think it's so important for us to be locked in on our past and our memories? And it means so much to you. I know why it means much to me, but why does it mean so much to yourself?
I think we learn a lot from our history. We learn a lot from personal relationships. I think sometimes there's a commonality in that, where in a world right now where there's a lot of division, there's a lot of commonality in learning that maybe your history isn't too much different than mine. And I think sometimes it's fun to learn that little things We all celebrate our birthdays, maybe not the same way. Many of us worship, but not all the same way. We go to schools, but maybe not all the same way. And we all have affections for those schools, maybe not in the same way. And those are common things that we can learn from historical information. And sometimes you learn just funny stuff, like we all aren't as formal as our history books either. You learn the quirky things that make all of us human. So,
I know it seems like these two schools, St. Andrews Parish and Middleton, just somehow put out some pretty amazing alumni that went on to be very successful. And West Ashley is a pretty small community, and that's part of my research is just how did this happen?
I think that's part of what's making it important to tell everybody, because people can get set in a mindset about, oh, we're just West Ashley, but we can be special West Ashley if we tell the story. And up until recently, nobody's really told that story.
Thanks for watching today's episode, and be on the lookout for additional episodes. If you'd like to be a guest or even a host in the Rocks and Razorbacks podcast, please let us know. We want the podcast to be the go-to place for cherished Middleton and St. Andrews memories. Don't forget, the Rocks and Razorbacks documentary geared for South Carolina ETV is in production, and we'd love your input and help with that as well. For now, go Rocks and, go Hogs. Well, you get it. Thanks.